The speed in which our industry and the world is changing is just mind-blowing. What took decades, then translated to years, then translated to months, and those days maybe even weeks, right, to become a legacy solution.
Hello and welcome to 11FS Fintech Insider Spotlight. I'm Benjamin Ensor, Director of Research and Strategy here at 11FS. In this show, we shine a spotlight on the best and brightest in the tech and financial services industries to get to know them, their businesses, and what they think the future of our industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Marcin Glogowski, Senior Vice President, Managing Director Europe, and UK Chief Executive Officer of Marqeta. Now, Marqeta has just released its annual State of Payments report. So how are you doing today?
Benjamin, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be back. I'm amazing, and I'm still very much excited with us opening and moving our team to the new office and larger office in London. It still basically buzzes with the energy both in me and in the team, so very excited.
It is fantastic when you bring everyone together into one place. It always creates a buzz that we forget sometimes when we work remotely from people. I mean, the remote working has many advantages, but it's nothing better than actually being with people. So we're going to dive into some of the key insights from your new report, Marqeta's new report, looking at how payments are evolving and what changes we've seen over the past year in customer behavior and how businesses are adapting. So this report is the sixth time, I believe, that you've done it.
It is.
And you focused on both the States and the UK, but we're going to focus on the UK.
Absolutely.
Because we're in the UK and... hey, British people are just more interesting. No, we're just going to focus on the UK because that's your focus. So people are, based on the report, you're saying that both consumers and businesses are really thinking harder about how they pay, how they get paid, how they can optimize payments. Can you give us a flavor of what you think has sort of changed in the landscape of how people pay or how businesses take payments over the past year?
Absolutely, Benjamin. And I think this is a great question. I think first, both consumers and SMBs, they continue navigating through economic pressures. It's been part of basically our environment for years now. But I think that coupled with the technological enablement and communication, what is possible and what is not, I think what we are seeing really is, first of all, SMBs on one side of the equation, they are increasingly interested and actively interested in smarter payment platforms, but those to deliver them potential efficiencies and helping them to focus on the growth while having, let's say, the mechanistic parts of their business or administrative parts of their business being sorted for them. And on consumer side, consumers are really more and more after modern flexible payment experiences, providing them both choice and convenience.
One of the things that the report shows is that British people are becoming maybe a little bit more considered in how they pay for things. They're maybe thinking a little bit harder about some of their purchases. And you found that there's growing use of buy now, pay later for everyday spending, as well as quite a bit of interest in sort of AI-powered wallets. You sort of touched on it a bit already, but what do you think is driving people to sort of think harder and explore their options a bit more?
I think tracking maybe a bit to the history of what fintech as such brought and focusing historically and delivering on convenience, easiness, and let's face it, also savings compared to historical and legacy alternatives. I think this became part of the new baseline. Those are not differentiators anymore. Those are actually more the expectations from how it should be. But I think the need from consumer side on, again, convenience and choice coupled with AI developments, I think that translates to what consumers really want and what they really expect is intelligent solutions. And what I mean by that, wallets that and their payment apps that support their daily spending behaviors, but offering them proactively and dynamically choice. And just touching on the numbers. So close to 1 of 2 British consumers we surveyed, they really expect their payment app recommending pretty much dynamically what type of payment they should be using in the context of this particular payment, whether this should be buy now, pay later, credit or debit. And one of three customers, they go even further. They would expect ideally that this choice is made for them. So not only conveniently provide me the alternative payment options dynamically in the context of this particular purchase, use my behaviors, look through my patterns, and offer for me what are the options and suggest which potentially is the best. But some go even further, do it for me.
The really interesting thing about that, of course, is that a lot of payment systems and a lot of the potential wallet providers have a stake in payments and earn more money from their customers paying in some ways than other ways. So it's an interesting point, isn't it? That you've got customers saying on the one hand, hey, it'd be great if I could have an AI system that would tell me the best way to pay. The risk in the shorter term might be that a system told them the best way for their wallet provider rather than for them. And I imagine, so you didn't ask customers about that, but there is an interesting question there, isn't there, about how that might work?
I agree. And look, obviously, you may question if this would be naturally objective. But I think in the end of the day, there is always a choice by the customer. And if there is a perceived trend that one of the providers is not objective vis-a-vis alternatives who are, I think it's potentially very short-term game.
Yes, indeed. You could see a company getting itself into all sorts of trouble by recommending a suboptimal
I agree.
way forward for customers. Yeah, mistreating your customers rarely ends well, does it? Okay, so what about, let's move on to small businesses, and you've touched on them a little bit already. So obviously they generate a huge amount of revenue for the British economy, just as they do in economies all around the world. And yet there's this sort of big funding gap. It's really still tough for small businesses to get funding. How do you think optimizing payments or improving payments can really help small businesses? I mean, you talked a little bit about sort of maybe trying to manage their finances more intelligently. What do you see as some of the sort of ways in which SMEs can be helped?
I think the ways are known. I think the question is, when will be the time that those ways are delivered? And let me come to this point, starting maybe from it's true, and we all know that the fintech focus, the fintech growth, majority of what solutions were delivered, this was to consumer over the years, starting from digital banking, optimizing the convenience element, the speed, easiness, adding to that funding options like buy now, pay later, recently adding flexible payment options, for example, Visa flexible credentials. This was all reimagining and redelivering to consumer. And SMB was simply largely overlooked from this standpoint. And yes, we have seen a few companies focused on the SMB, and some of them very, very successful, focusing on expense spend management or in lending space, companies like Capital on Tap. But you are very, very spot on. There is a huge funding gap. There is a need from the SMBs to be provided two elements of the equation. Funding is one, working capital is one. The other is helping them remove the administrative elements, and a lot of that can be done through payments. Expense management is one of the solutions that is growing. So I think the time is really now, as there is less and less space to largely differentiate yourself as a new player in consumer game. Obviously, there is still a bit of space, but when you think about the market that is existing there, the need is very clear, and there is not easier way to deliver from the company perspective growth into the consumer space. SMB is actually, I would be surprised, not saying the massive growth into the SMB solutions platforms delivered and successfully growing in the coming years.
Where do you think the the sort of opportunities to improve probably particularly payments for SMBs are? I mean, you talked about administration and obviously just processing payments, taking payments from all of your customers and so on. That takes time, that takes effort. You've got to reconcile the payments. International payments, cross-border payments are obviously considerably more complex, so there's cost there. There's opportunities if you offer maybe a wide variety of payment methods. We know that British people, just like all Europeans, pay an increasingly wide variety of ways, as we were just talking about. Where do you see some of the sort of biggest opportunities for small businesses to sort of improve payments and improve their overall growth and efficiency through payments?
I think looking beyond the surface, by which I mean, obviously, SMBs, like any other company, they both receive payments and they make payments. Options to receive payments is one of the layer. And I think this is relatively addressed this way or another, but each payment taken is an obligation for the company to properly capture the revenue, to report the revenue, to calculate the taxes, sales on the other side, and provide the invoicing. And buying on the other side also this is a cost element. The cost needs to be reported. It needs all to be endings with a calculated profit, tax, etc., etc. So what I mean by that is the space to grow is built on top of payments, but deliver on the adjacent spaces and required administrative challenges that today SMB, how they do it, it's number of Excel spreadsheets, multiple small systems, and it costs a lot of work in a context of, say, we have 5 to 10 employees. And those are elements of our operations we have to do. And this is taking massive, massive capacity from our small team to make those things happen. So payment solutions, including the required elements in the, let's say, downstream, and solving those elements for the companies, this is where I believe a lot of opportunity exists.
Do you think small businesses themselves sort of recognize that? I mean, sure, they've recognized the pain of, reconciling transactions, all the administrative costs, the tax, and all of that. Do you think they recognize the opportunity of using digital technologies to sort of automate and streamline a lot of that? Do you think there's an awareness of that?
I think seeing and also partnering with our customers, for example, in expense management space, and seeing how fast they are growing and how they're offering, coupling the SAS part of the solution that is addressing the administrative part, but coupling that with payment, that this payment is taken as, an core element of the SAS being executed. For example, spend that is tracked down and reported. I believe so. And I think even further in our research, there is very clear message. 90% of the SMBs in the UK, they are willing to take even initial cost related, broadly speaking, to payment space to help them optimizing their operations if they see it's very clearly delivering on this element.
I saw that in the report, and that was very interesting finding, wasn't it? That there is that willingness to invest, to improve their systems and their operations. What about the payments data? Because there's value in payments data, and sort of bigger companies can sometimes use that data to really understand their own customers better, understand their own sales better. Are you seeing any interest from sort of small businesses to sort of understand their payments data better?
I definitely see the interest and value that is delivered based on the data by and from the companies that decided to support the SMBs. And what I mean by that, even as one of the two areas relevant for the SMBs we named, is the lending element and allowing easier, faster access to the capital for the SMBs. And companies who decided to be in this space and do different than historically what banks do, they first of all are successfully bringing more capital to the companies that are overlooked from the classical banking space or by this space, by introducing and building more flexible underwriting models that take into account more information about the SMB than classically looked as a part of the scoring and underwriting system. And the other element is utilizing information where a particular company is spending coming from card transactions and tailoring the benefits and offers and value to the SMB linked to MCC codes and type of the merchants or sellers they are using more. So I see definitely a value in using and optimizing for the SMBs based on the data that providers of solutions for them can utilize and put into the equation simply from a different perspective.
Let's come back to that point you made a couple of minutes ago about how many SMEs say they'd be willing to invest in new payment solutions if they could get sort of long-term savings or more efficiency, even if there's an upfront cost. What sorts of things did you have in mind when you were asking SMBs or small businesses about that? Were you thinking in terms of accepting a new type of payment method, of offering buy now, pay later to your own customers, which of course relatively few small businesses can do themselves, but they could partner with a buy now, pay later provider. What sorts of things were you thinking about? What do you see as some of those opportunities for small businesses?
I think the core of the question was to understand which context SMBs are placing payment, and when they think about the payment, what do they really mean? And I think this was quite clear from the answers that actually they do think about payment in broader context than just accepting payment or making a payment. Right? This was quite visible. They relate payment to what can come together with a payment as additional service, as software as a service, that to solve their internal challenges, administrative challenges, which is, in the end of the day, stopping them from focusing where they should be focusing, which is just making more money. Right?
Do you think we'll see a shift in how small businesses sort of manage their payments? You've talked a bit about software as a service, and of course, many small businesses are using software as a service for obviously their accounting, but obviously also payments and a variety of other things. And we're seeing companies that are increasingly trying to specialize in helping small businesses with a whole variety of services. Do you think we could start to see the start of a shift where new players perhaps start providing payments and embedding payments into other platforms? I mean, a growing number of small businesses sell on marketplaces. One of the things you were talking about in the report was how consumers are increasingly buying things on TikTok or Instagram and so on. Do you think we may see payments getting embedded into not just platforms for the consumer, but increasingly into the platforms for the small businesses?
To the level I can answer this question, we not only can think about it, but from our perspective as Marqeta, we see it. And this is part of many active projects. I cannot name names who are exactly building that in exactly this context. And I think what I can say, though, is that this is their way they see a point of differentiation for their sellers, for if this is a platform business, two sides of the equation. They really see a value of building the adjacency and building additional level of offering service in the same time to their sellers on the platform as one of the reasons for the seller to prioritize focusing on this particular platform rather than alternative. And then, in effect, translating to better, broader availability, choice, time to deliver for the customer who's buying on the platform.
Just switching back to the consumer for a minute, the customer for a minute, one of the really interesting things in your report was how many British people and also how many Americans are now buying through social media sites. The strength of social commerce on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. I was going to ask you if that surprised you, but it probably doesn't because you see it in your own data. But it's grown fast, hasn't it?
I think, yes, it did. And I think historically there was always a lot of discussion or seeing the potential. Because in the end of the day, consumers want to buy in whatever context they are. If there is a context convenient for them, they don't want to be limited. I think what was making this particular element happening and enabled is, first of all, the growth, the continuous focus on fintechs to find a way to bring something that was not possible before. So what I'm saying is the need was there, but it took time actually to allow, enable, find also solutions to the regulatory and other risk-related elements to make it not only possible, but also secure and in line with how regulators would like to see it.
It's a good point about the regulatory environment, but also about the potential for fraud. Any new area of human activity, there's always somebody looking to take advantage of it, and we see that in various areas. For small businesses listening to this, or watching this rather, what are some of the steps you'd recommend if they want to try and modernize their payments and improve the efficiency of accepting payments and processing payments and so on? How can they do that without sort of disrupting their day-to-day operations? I mean, is it just a question of sort of ripping out their existing payment systems? What should small businesses be thinking about doing?
I think, first of all, through thinking and deciding through the lines what they are really struggling with and what they are trying to optimize. Right? That's always a first question, either for external part of what any company does or internal part of how and what needs to be solved. And keeping that in mind, being very open-minded, who are potential providers that are focused on SMB as a customer to deliver exactly what those customers are trying to solve. And there are many companies that historically built on SMB very selectively, but more and more are actually coming into play. And I can say so because what we do, we actually provide the flexible platforms related to card processing, issuing, and services that those companies utilize to be able to also very flexibly and scalably provide their solutions to the SMBs. So I think in the world of payments that is more and more complex, let's face it, there is more and more to do what you are good in doing, but also utilize the right set of partners who can provide you something which is very, very specialistic and calls for a very large scale. So what this means, SMBs will not self-solve for that. But again, there are companies on the rise. There are companies that were there, focusing primarily on the SMBs and their needs.
There's a growing variety of payments available to consumers, as you've rightly said, and there's all sorts of new ways in which people can pay. Have you seen anything that's really struck you about changes in customer behavior and customer adoption of new payment systems? We've talked a little bit about the growing use of buy now, pay later, and the slightly frightening use perhaps of buy now, pay later for grocery shopping and food ordering. Have you seen any other sort of trends in customer behavior that have interested you or surprised you?
I think what surprises me as basically being my age and being my generation is how preferences shift given enablement. And what I mean by that is even with buy now, pay later, right? In Gen Z, buy now, pay later, once someone tried in this generation to use buy now, pay later, most probably this is becoming, in multiple contexts, their preference. And I think the consequences, even for the banking industry, broadly speaking, and credit card industry that historically was assumed to be the way to provide flexibility of funding, I think that for me that this is very interesting to see how credit card market will evolve, given this very, very strong preference. But I think there is also a space for coexistence of various payment methods, bringing them all that potentially are to be chosen from, because they are also quite different, right? And bringing them to exactly this point and this moment, so making it contextual and up to potentially suggesting which one is the best for you, given everything we know, given your past purchases, and also potentially some of them can provide the value that can be shared with the customer in the context, because they also bring some economy in the equation of transaction processing, whether this is buy now, pay later or credit card or debit card. They look very, very different.
So looking ahead, what sort of excites you most about the future of payments? Is it this idea of this sort of intelligent wallet that optimizes our payments for us, or is it something else? What are you most excited about looking forward?
I think the intelligent payments, I would dare to say it's happening now. So what excites me most actually is all the potential developments in the SMB space. Because again, this is the space that is still largely untapped. This is the space where the first movers have a tremendous success. So this is what really excites me, building for the SMBs and seeing the companies that are successfully building for the SMBs. And the other part of my excitement is seeing Marqeta supporting those companies who build for the SMBs, for them to be able to provide solution that is scalable, that is stable, and ultimately that solves something very, very important, which is providing SMBs equal chances to access the capital and or solve their operational challenges.
It's exciting just how much change we've gone through. One of the things that struck me in the report is at some point you talk about traditional facial recognition, as if facial recognition has been around for ages. But that's sort of the point. Change has been so fast that we start taking things like that for granted. So
I agree. I mean, the speed in which our industry and the world is changing is just mind-blowing. What took decades, then translated to years, then translated to months, and those days maybe even weeks, right, to become a legacy solution.
Fantastic note to end on. So we're coming to the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find out more about you, more about Marqeta and everything that the company and you are getting up to?
Benjamin, thank you for having me. For anyone who would like to know more, I invite everyone to Marqeta webpage, to my LinkedIn, to the LinkedIn of the team, reaching out through the webpage. That is absolutely possible. Reaching out more directly to us also, that's very, very invited option.
Fantastic. And where can people get their own copy of the report, because they can't have mine?
I believe this is downloadable now from our webpage as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. So that's all we've got time for this week. So those of you who've enjoyed the show, please do follow 11FS on LinkedIn to stay updated with all the things that we're doing. And if you enjoy the show, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on previous episodes like this. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you again for being a fabulous guest.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, everyone.